Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Chemical Guys Detail Garage. Today in the shop, I want to go over how to enhance your shine, protect your paint, and keep your paint looking as great as possible. So today I wanted to go over with you guys some tips and tricks that you guys can utilize on how to maintain your shine. Now when it comes to vehicles such as like this black BMW right here behind me, you know, with black, especially the color black, you see everything. So all the dust, the dirt, the grime. So today we want to go ahead and focus on doing the video for you guys out there that want to maintain your shine. Coming from an owner of a black car myself, I tell you guys that black is one of the most beautiful colors that you can have, but it does require a lot of cleaning and maintenance to keep it looking that great. So as you guys can see right here, this BMW behind me, it already has a beautiful shine going on for itself, but we want to enhance that shine and we want to protect it so that any kind of dust, debris, we're prone to those kind of things so that the paint is super slick and we keep our ride looking as clean as possible for as long as possible. So step one when it comes down to having super slick paint is having super smooth paint. And how do you achieve that? Well, you want to go ahead and clay bar your paint. A clay bar is a decontamination tool that pretty much pulls off any kind of embedded dirt, grime, industrial fallout from the surface of your paint. So if your paint feels kind of rough and raspy, this is going to go ahead and remove that feel and it's going to restore that glass smooth feel. So before we begin with this, I do want to mention that this vehicle is already washed. We've already pulled it inside. It's fully dry and it's ready for us to go ahead and start doing all this work to it. So we're going to go ahead and begin by clay barring. So I'm going to grab my OG clay bar. Now this OG clay bar right here, it's a mixture between a light and a medium clay bar. So what does that mean? Well, it's a mixture between a light and a medium clay bar in the sense that it's going to pull off light to medium levels of contamination. So as I mentioned before, this BMW, it's pretty well maintained. It's for the most part pretty smooth, but there are some areas that have a little bit of contamination, such as the top areas like the roof, the hood, and the trunk. So we're going to focus on those areas, but we're also going to get the sides and the bumpers and all those other lower areas. With our clay bar, we're going to use clay luber. Now clay luber is a great tool to have with your clay bar because it's going to lubricate the surface so that you can gently pretty much glide the clay bar left and right on the surface without marring or scratching the paint. So what you want to do is you want to open up your clay bar here and you want to grab yourself a little chunk. Now you don't need to go ahead and grab the whole entire clay bar. You just want to make sure to grab a nice chunk that you can kind of grab with your forefingers. So once you've got yourself a little patty to work with of clay bar, you can grab your clay lubricant and start claying. All right, so now that we're ready to start claying, like I mentioned, the vehicle is clean. So before you clay bar, wash your vehicle or wipe it down with the quick detail spray or use a waterless wash. But since the surface is clean, we're ready to go. We have our clay bar here. We have it into a nice little patty that we can grab with our forefingers. We have our clay lubricant. What we want to do is spray directly to our clay bar. And then you want to spray a good amount onto the surface as well, just to make sure that the area is saturated with the clay lubricant. Because remember, you want to make sure that this clay bar glides on the surface. And you just want to work it in straight motions. Work in straight motions. You can go left to right, up and down. Doesn't matter whatever your preference is. Just refrain from using any kind of circular motions, because if anything gets caught onto your clay bar and you pretty much mimic that around the vehicle, then you could potentially scratch up the paint. So just make sure that you're using enough lubrication. Lubrication is key when it comes down to clay barring. And I'm not applying any pressure. I'm simply allowing the clay bar to gently work itself onto the surface. So it may look like I'm putting pressure down, but I'm just using the pressure of whatever my hand weighs just to kind of lay on top of the clay bar so that it doesn't just slide right out of my hand and so I don't mar the surface. And once you feel the paint gradually getting smoother and smoother, you can move on to another section. I usually like to cover a bigger section at a time whenever I'm working indoors, just because it makes the process much faster. On vehicles that are much more contaminated, you'll feel that once you first start, it feels like you're actually scratching the paint just because of how rough it sounds. But don't worry, it's just pulling off the contamination. So as long as you're using enough lubrication with the clay lubricant and you're gently gliding your clay bar, then you'll be safe. So once I've finished an area, I'm going to go ahead and set this down. I'm going to grab a workhorse towel and I'm simply going to buff off the excess of the lubricant. And as you guys can see right here, it wipes right off nice and smoothly. And you can actually feel the paint already, how smooth it is. It feels like glass right now. And then you just buff off any excess. So depending on how contaminated your paint is, this process can vary as far as like the time and the amount of clay lubricant needed. But ideally, if you're working on a maintained car, this process shouldn't take too long. I know it took me a little while to do that section. That's just because I want to demonstrate to you guys how it's done. But nonetheless, to get the whole entire vehicle done, it's going to take me less than about 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue with doing the rest of the vehicle, and I'll be back with you guys once we're done. All right, so we just finished clay barring the entire BMW. Now it's time to the polish. Now, when you look at the paint on the BMW, you would say it looks amazing, but we're still gonna hit it with the polish because we wanna get that super refined finish. So we have our Torq 22D here set up with our pads and our V-line. Now, I'm not gonna be using the entire V-line today simply because the paint on this vehicle is very, very in a good condition. So what I'm gonna go ahead and use is V38, which is the final grade polish. That's the finest polish that we carry in the V-line, and that's pretty much designed to go ahead and bring out that high gloss ultra finish. So that's gonna go ahead and pair well with our white Hexlogic polishing pad. Now I'm gonna use it with the white polishing pad because, like I mentioned, it's gonna refine the paint. So even though you don't see a lot of scratches or swirls in the paint, it's still a great idea to follow it up with the finer polish, just to give it a quick little one step, just to remove any kind of like fine micro swirls and scratches, any kind of light water spots, oxidation that builds up. All those things can be taken care of with V38 final polish. All right, so now that we have our machine set up, we're gonna grab our V38 final polish, and we're gonna apply 6 dime size drops onto this pad. Now, rule of thumb whenever you're working with these machines is you want to apply as much dots as there is as far as like the inch that it carries. So since this is a 6-inch, we're gonna apply 6 dime size drops. And that's just to make sure that the pad has an even amount of product throughout it, so that we can go ahead and work onto the surface for maximum cutting. So once we're done, we're gonna go ahead and pretty much blot it out onto the surface. So I'm gonna go ahead and blot this little section of the hood. And I'm using the Torq 22D because it has a 6-inch backing plate. Now, the reason I'm using that is because, as you guys can see, this BMW has a lot of flat panels. The hood is completely flat. The bumper, pretty much for the most part, is flat. The fender will probably be like the only area that I would say is like has a curved look to it, but the doors are completely flat, the quarter panels, the trunk, and the roof. So the 22D works out great because it has a 6-inch backing plate with a 21mm throw. So that's gonna go ahead and work great for kind of getting the best coverage with just one swipe of the machine. Now with this right here, now that I blotted out, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on to speed setting 1 to work in the product in the area that I'm gonna be working in. So now that I've worked it into this area right here, I'm gonna go ahead and throw it on speed setting 6 and work it in fully till it becomes translucent or clear. Now with the finer polish such as V38, that's gonna happen very, very quickly as opposed to one of the more aggressive compounds such as V32 or V34, simply because the abrasives in here, they're more refined, so they'll break down a lot more easier, and they're more so to refine the finish and to give it that deep wet shine. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin on working the machine onto the surface, and I'll be back with you guys once we're done. All right guys, so we just finished polishing this side of the hood. As you guys can see, I can already tell without even putting my ultra bright light on there that there's a huge difference as far as clarity and any kind of fine scratches and swirls. I'll bring you guys in for a little bit of a close-up. As you guys can see right here on the right side, you have a lot of still, fine scratches and swirls. On the left side right here, it's not perfect. There are some kind of rock chips here and there, but I mean, it definitely does look way much more better than the right side, which is unpolished, versus the left side, which is polished. Now, remember, we just use a fine polishing method. So we use V38, which is the finest polish in the V line. And if you were to go ahead and go a little bit more aggressive, you can get any kind of other deeper scratches and swirls out. So if your paint is more, neglected, go and resort to anything from like V34, at worst V32. If you do need to go ahead and do a light cut, then V36 is great enough. But just to show you guys just a quick little demonstration how fine V38 is and the kind of imperfections that it'll remove. As you can see, it looks great. So now that we finished polishing this side of the hood, we have a lot more work in front of ourselves. We have to polish the rest of the vehicle and then get it ready to apply our coat of glaze. So So after we finish polishing the paint with the V30 and the white hex logic pad, now we're going to proceed to the glaze. Now, what is a glaze? A glaze, it's a micro swirl filler and it enhances your shine. So even though I mentioned that we polished the paint, it's still a great idea to hit your paint with a glaze such as the wet mirror finish. One, because it has those micro swirl fillers. So if there's any kind of microscopic swirls or scratches in the paint, that's going to go ahead and fill them in so that we have more of a deeper lustrous kind of paintwork. And the reason that I'm using wet mirror finish is because it has anti-static agents. So with a black car like this or with any other car, it's going to go ahead and create a durable anti-static barrier on the surface of your paint that's going to help repel a lot of dust from sticking onto the surface of your paint. So as you can imagine, on a dark colored car like this BMW, that black color, wet mirror finish is going to bring out that super wet look finish. And as you guys that own black colored vehicles out there know, dust and dirt, it looks very nasty when it's on your black paint, especially when you just spent like 3 hours washing and detailing it. The last thing you want to worry about is dust clinging onto it right after you're done doing all that work. So use a product that's going to maintain your ride and repel a lot of that dust. Wet mirror finish, not only does it bring out that super deep wet shine, but also protects your paint. Another great thing about having a machine polisher to help you with doing all this work is that you can actually apply your coat of wet mirror finish with your Torq 22D or any kind of DA polisher. Now we have the black finishing pad right here. The black finishing pad works out great for applying your favorite chemical guys, glazes, sealants, and waxes. So in this instance, I'm going to use it to apply my wet mirror finish. I'm going to use it just like if I was going to polish my vehicle. The only difference is that when you're applying a product onto your vehicle, such as a glaze, sealant, or a wax, whenever you're using the finishing pad, you want to use it on the low speed settings such as 1 or 2, simply because you're not working the product into the surface of the paint. You're simply applying a nice fine coat over it. So you just want to make sure that it has a nice even layer on it, and you can apply that with speed setting 1 or 2 just to achieve that. So the same way to use this product, just like with the polish, you want to go ahead and open it up, and you want to put yourself about 6 drops of product. These can be a little bit bigger simply because you don't want to come back and forth as far as like having to reapply more product. 6 drops, that's more than enough. We'll close that up. So when you're applying a glaze to your paint, you want to apply a nice fine coat. So with this right here, we're not going to turn it up on speed setting 6. We're not going to work it in. All we're going to do is simply apply it to the surface. So we want to blot it out onto a little section. I like kind of working by panel, so I'm going to go ahead and coat the whole hood first. So what I'm going to do is blot it out. And like I mentioned, on speed setting 1, I'm going to spread this out because I'm not working the product into the surface. I'm simply allowing the machine to spread a nice fine even layer onto the hood. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on to speed setting 1, and go ahead and coat the hood. Guys, and just like that, within less than 30 seconds, I applied a coat to the entire hood, and I can go ahead and continue with doing the rest of the vehicle. So I just want to show you guys how quick that was, just to show you guys how quickly and easy and efficiently you can apply your products onto the paint with using a DA polisher. So after we finished applying our coat of wet mirror finish, we let it sit for anywhere from about 10 to 15 minutes for it to flash, and then we buff it right off with the premium microfiber towel. So now that we finished applying that, it's time to apply our coat of protection, which is jetseal. Now jetseal I'm applying because it's going to bond directly and adhere directly to the coat of wet mirror finish. So not only does wet mirror finish set a foundation to bring out the brilliant pop of your paint, but it also sets a foundation for any kind of other sealants or waxes to adhere to better. So in this case, I'm going to apply a coat of jetseal over that, and that's going to go ahead and pretty much grab it. Since it's already set the foundation onto the paint, it's going to go ahead and grab it so that the sealant has the best durability possible. Now we're using jetseal because I kind of figured we'd follow with the ease of the application method with the machine, and jetseal is perfect to apply with the machine. The only difference is that you want to make sure to use a different black finishing pad because your other pad is already filled with the wet mirror finish. So you can either choose to clean it out or have a separate pad just, for that case of applying jetseal, just so that you don't have to work, back and forth, cleaning and having to apply and coming back and cleaning. It works out great for having one pad for each specific purpose. In this case, I have one pad for applying wet mirror finish and I have another pad for applying a coat of jetseal. Now we're going to apply a coat of jetseal with our DA polisher. Now same thing with the glaze, you want to make sure to apply this finely. So we're not going to be here all day applying this, and that's the reason I like using these products, is because you can apply them with the machine and it makes detailing so much more easier and more faster because you can do this very quickly, efficiently, and get those results that you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and set that down on the floor. And I'm going to continue with applying the coat of jetseal onto the vehicle. I'm also going to apply it to the glass as well, just so that we get that durable hydrophobic protection on the glass as well, so that when we're driving in inclement weather, all that water just pretty much sheets or beads right off. So I'm going to go ahead and get this done, and I'll be back with you guys once we're done. All right guys, and just like that, it's been about 15 minutes now. I let the jetseal sit a little bit longer just because I wanted to make sure that that sealant bonded direct to the paint. So with jetseal, like I mentioned with the glaze, you want to let it sit for anywhere from about 10 to 15 minutes. Ideally, you want to let these products pretty much flash. So whenever they kind of have like that white kind of hazy look to them, or if you can just go ahead and wipe it off with one clean swipe of your microfiber towel, then you'll know that you're ready to go ahead and buff it off. So we give it about 15 minutes. I'm going to grab our microfiber towel here, buff it off, and reveal that beautiful lustrous protected shine. Now we applied it to the paint, we applied it to the glass. I'm not sure if you guys saw, but I actually applied it to the windshield as I was applying it to the whole entire vehicle, simply because you want to get the job done sooner. So we applied it to the glass as we were applying it to the paint, and it just made life so much more easier, much more faster, and just made it so that we can apply a pretty even coat of jetseal throughout the entire vehicle. And just like that, check that out. Just from buffing off this little section, it looks 10 times as much better than what it was when we first started with. After a long day of detailing, paint correction, and getting this BMW back into tip-top shape, it looks amazing. It's sealed and protected, and it has a layer of anti-static with those micro swirl fillers from the wet mirror finish. As you guys see, the result on this BMW looks phenomenal. I personally think it looks way much better than when it first came in here, simply because of the glaze that we put on there. It made a huge drastic difference when we set that down on there. So with all this work being done, what do we do now? Well, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned to you guys that we were giving you guys our tips and tricks on how to pretty much maintain your vehicle and how to keep it looking as great as possible and dust-free as possible. So we mentioned using that wet mirror finish because it did have an anti-static agent. Now, to maintain your ride, we want to go ahead and show you guys synthetic quick detail spray. Now, synthetic is great because not only is it a quick detail spray, but it also has an anti-static agent to it that's going to repel a lot of dust from sticking to the paint. So as you're wiping off any kind of dirt, grime, or you're going to a car show, your car's been sitting for a while, this is going to go ahead and pick up all that bird poop, grime, dust, fingerprints, and also lay down that anti-static layer so that when you drive off next time, a lot of that dust doesn't want to stick to your surface, so it ends up just pretty much flying right off of your paint without you having to actually wipe it down or anything like that. So it makes a huge difference in terms of maintenance because of the high gloss shine that it provides, the slickness that it provides as far as like wiping off those contaminants without scratching or swelling your paint, and repelling a lot of that contamination from sticking to your paint. Synthetic quick detailer is as easy to use as any other quick detail spray. All you have to do is spray directly onto the surface and wipe off with the microfiber towel. Now this does have that layer of anti-static, so with this product right here, you want to just kind of come back with the dry side and just give it a final little wipe down, and that'll just pretty much pick up any excess of the grime that's still on the surface and buff in that layer of the anti-static protection. So remember, this works out great for maintenance. I know we just did a full detail on this car, but sometimes whenever you're doing this much work on a vehicle, the rest of the vehicle tends to get kind of dusty and stuff. So this works out great to kind of give it that final cherry on top, clean it up, and pretty much wrap everything all up. If you guys like this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up. And if you guys liked any of the products that we use here today, make sure to visit our website, chemicalguys.com, to pick yours up today. As always, my name is Joey. This is Chemical Guys Detail Garage. We'll see you guys next time.